Congressman LaTourette, thanks for joining us this week.
Yep.
Well, we're going to talk about something that I think everyone in the country is talking about, and that's Ebola. But kind of wanted to talk about it from the kind of DC angle. So talk about what this current crisis and responding to this means for the Hill.
Well, not just the Hill, but this is another example of something we've talked about before, and that is that President Obama just can't catch a break. Because the news is really about. Matter of fact, there's an article today that says, is this the end of his presidency? Because right or wrong, and I happen to think it's wrong, that because he's the president and because there are some holes in the way that people in Dallas and people down at the CDC apparently are dealing with this, it all splashes and lands on the president's desk. There's a hearing on the Hill today by a subcommittee of the Energy and Commerce Committee examining this and the failures. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's bad news for the Democrats because there's no way they win. They've tried this sort of argument, well, we're not ready because the Republicans shut down the government and had sequestration and so forth and so on. But the simple fact of the matter is that when President Bush was in office and you look at the funding stream for this type of activity, it was $300 million. When the Bush administration left town, it was $4 billion. And there's been no dramatic increase under the Obama administration. So saying that, taking away 7% of a 15-fold increase is somehow causing this it's a nice try, but it's not going to work. This is going to splash badly on the Democrats in what's already going to be a pretty dismal election. But they need a czar. Washington's a great place for a czar for this, a czar for this. I think people are reaching the conclusion that somebody's got to be in charge because this has the opportunity to create some panic. I don't happen to think it's a huge, panic-worthy thing at the moment. But you get a few more cases, and you get the case of the Frontier Airlines plane going from Cleveland to Dallas with this nurse, and it has the chance of spiraling out of control. It's certainly all over the 24/7 news channels. And somebody's got to put an end to it, and the president has the ability to do that, and I hope he does.
Well, and you talk about how it seems like President Obama can't catch a break, that it's kind of one piece of bad news after another. And by correlation, those turn out to be bad news for Democrats who are running. One of the only issues where it's looked like Democrats have been able to gain any ground, have any traction on, is this question of outsourcing. Right. That we've seen some kind of high-profile examples like Burger King acquiring Tim Hortons and then moving its headquarters to Canada. Is that an issue that can save Democrats in this cycle, or is this really just kind of grasping at straws at this point for them?
No, I think it's grasping at straws, and the problem is because at the same time, you have people saying, well, these corporate moves or inversions or whatever they're called, they're unpatriotic, they're bad, this, that, and the other thing. Everybody, Democrats included, the president included, in the same breath is saying, but the real solution is comprehensive tax reform. Well, who's in charge of comprehensive tax reform? The people here in Washington. And so it's sort of, it's not getting legs. Enough legs in some districts, in bright blue districts, but they're winning those districts anyway, or those states anyway. But in purple states, purple districts, I don't think it's got legs, and I don't think it's going to be the silver bullet they're looking for going into November the 4th.
Well, talk about November. Obviously, we're getting very, very close. And over the last couple of months, it's looked increasingly likely that Republicans would recapture the Senate and obviously retain control in the House. And still, it seems like there's this glimmer of hope that there's a series of races, particularly these red state Democrats, who are still hanging tight, who are still keeping that hope alive for Democrats. At the end of the day, do you think this is a race where on Election Day we see things break one way or the other? In other words, do you think it's going to be a race where all of these red state Democrats get wiped out, or most of them, or that most of them hold on?
Yeah, I think they're all gone at the end of the day because again, the media is trying mightily, and some of these Democratic talking heads are trying mightily to say, oh, this race is competitive, that race is competitive. But I'm telling you, I was here in 2006. I was in the House in 2006. When we lost the House, we lost the Senate. We had an unpopular president who was about where President Obama is now in public opinion surveys. The generic ballot was awful. They didn't trust us on any issue. They thought that we'd really screwed up, and so they fired us. And so there may be a race or two, and the ones that I would sort of pay attention to are Arkansas and North Carolina maybe. But I think this isn't going to turn out well. But you know what? I could be completely wrong, but I just see the handwriting on the wall. This is not going to be a happy election day.
Well, and I think it's a great comparison, the 2006 comparison. And I remember that in 2006, there were lots of Republican talking heads around this point in 2006 who were saying, there's still time, the election's not today, a lot can happen in the next couple of weeks. And it seems like that's what we're hearing from a lot of Democrats. And we saw Republicans in 2006 trying to distance themselves from the president. We're seeing Democrats trying to do that. Do you think that you can really pull that off? Do you think if you're a Democrat running for election or re-election, that you can distance yourself from the leader of your party?
No. I mean, you can try. And
Right,
you can certainly say that I don't agree with the president on this, or I'm not going to be with him when he comes to town. But, I mean, you're a Democrat. And just like I was a Republican in 2006, there's no way that I could get away from George W. Bush. I didn't try, but I'm a Republican. But for me, I see a lot of polling. And the race, the proof is sort of in the pudding. We have a Republican member of Congress in Staten Island, New York. His name is Michael Grimm. He's under indictment, and he's ahead by like 8 points.
That's unbelievable.
So if even people who've been federally indicted on the Republican ticket are winning by 8 points in a place like New York, it doesn't look good.
It doesn't bode well for Democrats.
That's right.
Well, tied to the election is this talk of the lame duck session. And I know a lot of what's going to happen or not going to happen is going to be determined on whether or not Republicans gain control of the Senate. Right. But this week we started hearing some more rumblings about some transportation-related items that may actually move during the lame duck.
Yeah, it's interesting now. We've talked about, is it going to be a productive lame duck or an unproductive lame duck? But you begin to see these glimmer of things that a group called A4A, which is basically a collection of the airlines, and so it's United and American and all the airlines. Interesting article in my opinion, that the head of that association says, well, during the lame duck, there's a couple of things, such as dealing with TSA fees and sort of what's known as transparency and ticketing, that you're going to have listed on your ticket. Their big objection is that, well, if you buy a $500 plane ticket from Cleveland to Washington, well, the airline is really only $350, and the rest is a TSA fee or a baggage handling fee or a tax or something like that. And the feeling is that there are going to be some of these rifle shots that don't have a lot of stiff opposition, aren't really partisan driven, are more territorial, or whether you like airlines or you don't like airlines. And so I think we're going to see some more of those bubble up, and we actually may have an interesting menu of things that legislators can pick from during the month of November and early December. And God forbid they should actually get something done, but there is a glimmer of hope.
Well, and I saw a report that they're talking about Hal Rogers and Barbara Mikulski had actually had a secret meeting and starting to talk about an omnibus for the lame duck, and they're saying they may be in session for a month. Do you expect it, even if it's not a particularly productive lame duck, to be a longer lame duck?
Well, I think they'll get to December 11th, and because they never get to anything without getting to the very last day.
Right.
And I think the question is, it's an interesting day, December 11th, because you then have exactly 2 weeks to Christmas. And I can see a scenario that they don't finish their business by the 11th, and they say, well, we'll go to the 18th, which is a week before Christmas, and then call it a day there. History is against what the appropriators are trying to do. They haven't in 10 years produced a omnibus spending bill at the end of the year in a lame duck. But history is on the side of the defense authorization bill, which is also coming due, because it's been passed 50 years in a row. And so I think you do have a good chance of that being produced in the lame duck. So
Hill staffers probably shouldn't be going ahead and buying their tickets back home to their districts anytime soon.
No, I think if you're going to buy some ski lift tickets, you might want to wait until the week of Christmas.
On that note, thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you.